Rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the program. This is Radio Ramadan 87.7, and please join us today because we have a program that will continue whole the Ramadan every Monday, and the program we entitled Community Development Program. Why we do that, it is important where we're coming from, that the community is always have that way of making progress. And my entire life, working adult life, I've been community worker. So there is no brainer making sure that the title of my program becomes a community development. Today, I'm very fortunate to be joined by Dylan Matheson Dodds, who's very much always here with us, even the last year as co-presenter. Today, this year he can do whatever he can and whenever he can, but today he's the guest, the first guest of the show, and we will be talking about autism in many directions. But before I do that, let me explain where our audience in worldwide can get us: www.ramadan.fm or DAB 9B, or you can come and call directly to the studio here in Evington Road in Leicester, or you can call us 0116 4822 or WhatsApp us 077 488 55055. That's how you can get in touch with us, and all the Facebook and Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, name it, we are there. TikTok. So thank you very much for those who just joined us. This is a program that will continue this show every Monday from 11 to 12. And let me turn to my guest and co-presenter, Dylan. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Yourself?
I'm fine, thank you. And I went straight to the program because of our choice, why we call it community development, and that's how we're going to stick with. And there will be many guests. Today, the program will be focusing. Many people don't really know much about autism. Because as an autistic person yourself, can you just briefly tell us how, when you were young, how you diagnosed, and all those people who are listening to us who might have children with autism, how it came about, all that unfolding ways of living with autism, but also accepting it, knowing it, and all those points.
Yeah, absolutely. I will admit, I thought you were going to ask me to define autism in my own words, and that is such a big question to answer. I could do it, but we'd be another couple of minutes. But yeah, talk about my own experiences. So I was originally put into foster care with my younger brother, and then we were adopted. Because I had a significant extra need, which was being seen as due to having an autism diagnosis, my brother and I were separated. So then I was adopted a bit later on, around the age of 5. Now, unfortunately, my adopted parents didn't get on particularly well, and I know one of them said in the past that there was a bit concern of like seeing autism as a label, which they didn't want to have on their child. So I do know down the line that my diagnosis was effectively hidden for several years. And when I was sent off to a school, when I was then moved up to Liverpool after my adopted parents divorced, I was put back into foster care at the age of 9. And during the second time in foster care, I was diagnosed as autistic because it came out I'd actually it'd been known I was autistic already, and then just not come through. But during that time, so the people I would now call when people say the words mum and dad, who do you think of? Most people think they're biological parents, and don't get me wrong, I have a fantastic relationship with them both. But when I think out of everyone who I've grown up with, like Mick and Jane, my adopted aunt and uncles, my adopted mum's brother, have been the ones that have been there for me the whole way through. They were 2 weeks away from emigrating to Australia when they found out I'd been put back into care, and they gave that life up. So it's 16 months travelling from Leicester to Liverpool every fortnight, picking me up from school, bringing me down for the weekend, and taking me back up. Of course, during this time, I've been diagnosed again, and once I finally moved in with them, it was then decided to tell me I was autistic. And I think that was the right decision, because if they told me earlier, because I've been in and out of like families and schools constantly, we always want to have a bit of stability in our lives, and things that we consider stable concepts like a home and a family. I didn't quite have that. So the decision to tell me about my autism was delayed until I was in a more stable place. Now, when I first found out about being diagnosed autistic, I have to admit I was relieved.
Why is that? Why is that?
Because it was answering questions that I've been having for so many years. I didn't understand why I struggled with a lot of stuff. I didn't understand why I was getting so angry when certain things were happening. I was always just seen as, I was the naughty kid. I was the kid, and I was just seen as a bad child by getting people in my one part of an old family. And even the school that I was in when I was at Liverpool, they just saw me as this evil child. So when I found out about my diagnosis and people explained the ways that autism affects a person, it actually all made sense. Because then it's like, because once you have an answer, you can work on something. If I know, okay, it's this environment that's causing this, and this is known to be a thing, what I can then think, okay, what can we do? What can we introduce to make it easier? What kind of strategies can we have moving forward to make all of that easier? Whereas beforehand, I was never even allowed that, because I was just seen as the bad kid. So it was one, having the answer to the questions I've been having, but two, it was upon having an answer, it was like, okay, there's something we can work with here. Does that make sense?
It does. And tell me more about the schooling, because one of the difficulties, I'm myself as a parent of autistic child, it is difficult to get the not better, but suitable for your child school-wise. So how you navigated when you were young in the school system?
Well, I will admit, like I said, up to year 7 and including year 7, I spent a lot of time suspended due to having meltdowns. But like I said, once I was aware of my diagnosis, because my mum, Jane, she fought for me to stay mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
And she fought really hard, because I know a lot of other parents wanted me out of the school. Everyone was like, you can't have this kid in this school. He's a nightmare. Kids aren't going to learn. But she fought tooth and nail.
Other parents were complaining about you? Okay.
But like I say, she fought tooth and nail to keep me in there. So we had a few things in place. So I always had to have a support teacher in the room. So I wasn't actually allowed out during break and lunches. So there was a room in the English block that we used to have. I didn't mind really, because I got to play on the computers. I used to play chess with a lot of people as well. So that break and lunch was absolutely fine. And also probably better than me going outside. And I even started working with teachers on what could we do to make things better. So an old office was converted into what we'd now call a quiet room. Although back then I think this was more like a very early stage for it. It was literally just a room with a beanbag and a couple of pictures. The beanbag's always really, really comfy. If you do have a meltdown, nothing's going to get damaged if you throw a beanbag around in comparison to anything else that you could pick up. And this room was a room that if things got too much, I knew where it was, I knew how to get to it. But of course, one of the problems we had then is how do you navigate explaining to teachers that that's why you're going? Because of course, you can imagine if kids just get up and walk out of the class, they're going to get told off. You can't just leave when you want. So I had to be like, how do I navigate a system to tell the support staff or the teachers that I'm going because I need to go? And originally, the school's idea of doing this was wave a giant card up saying, I'm not happy. And I thought this was absolutely awful, because if it's another classmate that's trying to push your buttons, trying to force that meltdown, you're giving them the reaction they want anyway by waving this giant card.
So they win. So they continue doing it again and again to you.
Exactly. So I wanted to come up with something more subtle, and I did. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that when I was first diagnosed, we explained what's called the 1 to 5 scale for a level of stress. Mm-hmm. So 1, I'd like to think we're both at a 1 now, cool, calm, collected. 2 is when you're starting to get anxious. 3 is when, things are really wrong. 4, have you ever seen like in cartoons where you get a really red-faced person with the smoke billowing
smoke,
out?
Coming out, yes.
That's the 4, and then 5's the meltdown.
Okay.
So I had to recognise when I was at a 3 or a 4 would be better, and then try and give a signal. And the signal I gave is I put my hand up like this, I say, excuse me, miss, can I go to the toilet, please? See, everyone sees this hand, no one sees the other hand. It's hard to show it on the camera, but if you can see, how many fingers am I holding up?
4.
So that was my way to communicate to the person that I'm on a 4, I need to go.
So
and I'm doing that, the relevant person
you're sitting and then on the, and the other hand on the table, putting 4 or 5 or
yeah, 4, 'cause 5
4.
is the meltdown itself.
Okay.
But by doing it that way is that the person who needs to know gets to know.
Can I be tricky now?
Of course.
As you child, if you don't like something that's happening in the class, would you use the excuse to get us going out occasionally? But or you strict with
I can't pretend the thought didn't cross my mind, but no, I don't think I did.
Okay, so you always wanted to go out when you needed.
Yeah.
Okay, because some children, when they don't like the subject or they don't like the teacher,
and I can understand that particularly because there was one teacher I absolutely despised.
but you stayed there as well.
Yeah, as much as I
Okay.
could. I'd only go if I knew I needed to go.
Okay.
Otherwise, think of all the time I could miss on PE.
Yeah, because the reason I'm asking this question is that they say, and I stand by it because I see my child. They don't lie. Even if they are wrong, they will tell you they are the one who did this. Whereas the other children might might deny things.
Yeah.
You see where I'm going with this?
I can absolutely see. And I can understand some parents will be like, well, this could just be a signal to try and skip lessons.
Yes.
Like, I can see its potential downside, but for me, I say, because I would always rather be in the classroom learning. Like, I will admit, when I felt like I knew everything in the class, I was a bit more of a class clown attitude. So in history, I kind of tried to turn myself into a comedian. Because I was so interested in history, all the things that they were teaching, I already knew. So I was like, well, I don't really know what to do here. So I try and put like a few like comedic twists in that, or try and do things that even my teacher didn't know of. And to the point I used to get yelled at. On our last day at high school, I got yelled at him for not learning.
And the reason I did bring up is also I advise some parents. Well, one of the children that I advise the parents with, he's always in trouble, but when he's in trouble with other kids, he will be honest and telling what he has done, how he reacted, but others won't own up what they made, and then he will end up to be the one,
the ringleader almost,
or the person who created that mess and get detained, and he was saying it's unfair. I know that they are lying, but I told my part of story what happened, but yet they're not trustworthy. Why Mrs. always Mrs. gives me the detention?
Yeah, so I understand that, and actually, is even school. I remember, I think the last time I ran away from school was because of that, and it was during, I think you call it house heats. It's like a trial for sports day, and I'd been bullied by the people in my house, and I was in houses in what you have in school, not houses in home. But when I complained to the support teacher about it, they'd all said that I was the one who'd been causing a problem, and my own support teachers believed them over me. They told me I was lying, and at that point I just got so angry I just walked off.
The other, if we continue the discussion further, when you come to the age of puberty, when the hormones were kicking in and all that, we find that, and statistics find that many autistic children are in meltdowns or not being understood. So can you just tell us your own experience, whatever you can share, about those days?
Yeah, so, I mean, so talking about puberty, the main thing I had in place was actually I put in a few strategies to try and bring it down. So, for example, I had a punching bag that I'd use when I get home. And it wasn't a regular punch bag, it was a Homer Simpson inflatable one. So, every time you punch it back down, it just keeps bouncing back up.
Yes.
And then one time I forgot that, and I'd gone into a series of punches, and I got hit in the face. Oh. So I can say I've been hit in the face by Homer Simpson.
Yeah.
And that was always quite handy. And actually, for when I was at Lutterworth College, I used to, weirdly enough, like compared to now, I couldn't even tell you the last time I've been to a gym. But when I was at Lutterworth College, I asked for the keys to the gym every day for 2 reasons. One, no one else used the gym during lunch. So by having the keys, I got to have the gym to myself. And I used to really enjoy the rowing machine. So I'd do quite a bit of activity. But yeah, I'd be on my own, put my own music on, doing it like a workout thing. I used to love it.
So that way you taking the heat out of you, so that in an environment where you're comfortable and no one is watching and all that, and okay, so you exercise was your
Exercise really actually did find that quite helpful. And when I started college, I did 2 hobby classes. I did boxing for the first year. It was absolutely fantastic. And I did fencing. So boxing was an after-school thing, and fencing was a lunchtime thing. And again, stuff like that. Like at that point, I didn't really go to the gym because, you know, when there is gym other people went to. I was like, the really reason I went during little is because I had it to myself.
Okay.
But yeah, I always found a level, like, and I used to do a lot of walking as well. So because I have a whippet at home, whenever I'd get back from school, I'd take him out for a walk, and I'd always be about an hour to an hour and a half. I used to take him about 5 miles every day, so I'd be doing that on top of what I was doing. So yeah.
Oh, that's a very. So you had your strategies to ease. When you were coming to college and hoping for university, is there anything that you can share with the? Because there are a lot of youngsters now that are just out of the GCSE and
just in the mocks,
and then they marks, and then they trying, is it university for me? It's not, all that questions, but your own experience, and I understand that the autism is individualistic, depending the person, not any other thing.
My first bit of advice is, if you're stressed out about your mock results, it's not the end of the world. I can tell you one exam, it was my history, crime and punishment. I was so stressed out entering it, I forgot my name. I spent 15 minutes trying to remember who I was during an exam.
Oh my God.
But the reason I say this isn't just because of that, as funny as it is. But when I was applying for colleges, of course, I know they will look at the mocks as something to consider. But at the same time, it's really good if you know what you want. So I knew, even after the mocks, even though I hadn't done so good, exactly where I wanted to go. And my family wanted me to go to QE College in Leicester. I wanted to go to Keggs in Nuneaton, because Keggs was a quieter campus. It's about similar size, but half the number of students. And it offered an A-level in archaeology at the time. And that was my big passion back then. So I already knew that's where I wanted to go. But as a favour to Jane, I said, right, I will go do the interview at QE. When I did the interview at QE, before it even started, I said to the lady involved, oh, by the way, I should just let you know, I don't actually want to come here. You're my backup option.
Oh, my
Apparently, you don't say that when interviewing for a college.
So honesty still
the bluntness came through.
And
I explained that I liked the college. There was just other stuff I liked about this other one too. So I wasn't saying I'm absolutely not going here, just it's not my favourite choice. But weirdly enough, 2 weeks later, I found out that they were interested in me. Even though I hadn't done that well in my mocks, I know people had done much better at me, did the whole sucking up approach. They seemed to find the bluntness quite refreshing. I think it's because, not just because I said I'm not interested in there, but because I made it very clear what I wanted to do for college, and that I knew that beforehand.
So the interview helped them to understand, as you student, to be direct what you want. And it's, again, this one is compliment. It's autistic trait showing, because they don't push around the thing. They go straight.
It's a lot of autistic people, very blunt.
Very blunt.
Straight
Go
to the point.
straight to the point, and they found it that very okay. Yes.
And then the last thing I would add in is, when looking at exams, is there's a big difference between being correct and being correct to a mark scheme. And again, I think anyone who's done like, if they've not done past papers for revision and that, when they've gone into an exam, there'll be times they're absolutely right. Like, you think logically what they've written down is correct, but they wouldn't get marks because it doesn't appear on the mark scheme. So if you are studying, again, I would always say try and use past papers when possible. I like using mark schemes because it gives you an idea of what would get kind of the approval. Because I didn't do that before the mocks either, and that was another reason why I struggled.
When you pass the college and everything, I know, but I want to our listeners to understand also. You went to university.
Yes.
And what do you find out in the universities?
So university was a weird one for me because, I mean, I took a gap year beforehand because I had a reason. I wanted to meet my birth family. I wanted to get myself working. 'Cause at the time, I only had a small job. We were just stocking shelves at a petrol station. Don't get me wrong, fantastic job. I really enjoyed it. They even let me wear my headphones as well. Like, the employer actually went out of her way to learn about autism before making the decision to bring me on board, and I loved it. And you could tell someone taking the time to learn is a really good person you want to have. And, I mean, although there was an example later on that wasn't so good, but going to uni was interesting because I really enjoyed my time at uni, but I would say I really struggled with it. As most people know, I didn't finish my course in the end. I literally got through about second year, finished that, and I didn't get around to doing the last final year. But my biggest difficulty I found wasn't just with doing all like the academic side of things. I would say it was because I had this. I do desire to be a very sociable person, and I'm the kind of person that I'll do as much as possible, then completely burn out, and then I'll just throw myself back into it. It's a really bad loop because it's like you need to take time off. I get here all the time, like I know, and it'd be nice too, but I already know my brain. It will try and keep me as busy as possible.
Busy possible.
And so when I did my first year, I remember attending almost every lecture I could. I was even asking questions at the end for the lecturers. Like I was taking a lot of information on board. I knew what I wanted to do for dissertation. But the true value for me for uni was never the academic side. It was the life skills. It was sharing a house with two other people. You know, I was sharing a flat at first year with four other people you don't. At first year was crazy because you didn't know these people at all until that day. Whereas at least when you're house sharing with friends at uni, you more often than not, you've made that decision to live together as a group. So you've never not met them before. You've met them, you got to know them for it, then made the decision to live with them. And I'd say for that part, university was invaluable. Because there's no way I would have ever thought about what do I want to do to live on my own if I hadn't gone to uni.
Okay, so life skills were the most important bit.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you would have been in the nest with the parents forever.
Well, because most people want to stay in comfort, don't they? And trying to do that when just working, that's a very different thing to, I say, when you're going yourself out there, you know, just having the fun of university of it all. And I can understand that completely. Like, don't get me wrong, I did university the wrong way, but I'm still very glad I did it. I wouldn't change the time I spent doing it.
Thank you. Those who just join us, this is Ramadan Radio, and we are on live on 87.7 FM Leicester, and we also live on DAB 9B. Also, you can listen to us www.ramadan.fm. And if you have a question and you are a parent out there, you are following us, please you can call the studio line 0116 4822 or you can text 077 4850 55055. Moving on, and one of the things you learned from university is those skills that are very important, life skills. I always tell parents who think, especially parents like me with I hate the word non-verbal, but few verbal autistic children, not to just hand on to things, but they can learn. So life skills are more important for life than anything academic. So that life skill helped you living with other people outside your comfort zone.
Well, yes, to a level, absolutely. And I mean, I will admit I struggled with house sharing, but I didn't mind it because they were people I got on with. Now, and again, for, you know, when you, let's say, if I was doing that work capacity, you come back from work, what do you want to do? Somewhere like where I live at the moment is a very remote village. It's not as many options as living in the city. So on that part, like there's a much greater amount of independence, which I know for uni years I very much enjoyed. Having the car, of course, makes that all a lot easier, which I've been driving for almost 2 years now. But yeah, when I talk about life skills, it's... At the end of the day, there's nothing more a parent wants than their child to be able to support themselves as much as possible. I think we could all agree on that.
Indeed. And
again, having those key life skills lessons and being able to prep a meal. Now, I'll admit, I struggle with prepping meals. I can do it with a lot of effort. It's weirdly enough, if I plan to make my favourite meal, which is a paella, I used to do this when I was house sharing. I probably do it once a term. I plan it about a month in advance that's the night we're going to do it. And then like 2 days before, I could go get the ingredients, no problem for that meal, and make it like that. But if you were to ask me, could you make a paella for me right now? I wouldn't be able to do it.
So you need you need long time of preparation. Okay. In that.
But the other problem is that I'm not a fan of meal plans. So meal plans are normally quite good, when you have your routine of it all. A routine, of course, being a very important part for the lives of autistic people. But for me, I struggle with seeing a routine for meal plans. I wouldn't know how to do it. So what I've done for the past few months as a test, so I've started doing 2 shops a week. I'll do like one where I would get a few meals and then all the stuff for like half my lunches, because I tend to eat the same things every lunch. It might be something like duck noodles, it might be like cheese sandwiches, that kind of thing. And I know I'll stick to those for lunch times. There's little to no deviation there. I'm not worried about that. When it comes to the evening, that's where I want to keep changing up. And I can't think to get that many meals ahead. So I'll get like 4 days worth. And then later on in the week, I'll probably get another 4 days worth and do it that way. And I found that's a lot easier as long as I get the same stuff for lunchtime.
And the student budget is not helping, so you couldn't eat out.
To be honest, I used to get so many box meals. I used to get like the Bisto ones, £1.80. Used to get like 5 of them in one go.
Okay.
It's like, that'll feed me.
Good. Moving on, then after university, but before I get to the point that I want now, an advice for parents, because many parents do not know. We tear our hair and whatever is left on me to understand our children, but sometimes we get it wrong. So how an autistic start from childhood would need to be understood by parents, what it is that because if we get it wrong, the child go into meltdown or all those situations. What it is that we need to be careful of as parents?
Well, of course, the main thing to note is that each parent will have different things to take on note because every autistic child is very different. But a few key things I would say is that if your child's had a meltdown, don't immediately try and visit what caused the meltdown. So, like, if it's happened like 20 minutes ago, don't just come in and go, right, we need to talk about it now, because that's probably going to lead to a second meltdown. So my family used to say, give it a few hours. So I used to normally go for a walk. And I'd have my music on, that kind of shut myself away for a bit, give myself time to really cool through everything and then come back. It's one of the biggest problems that I'm aware of. So have you heard of the word alexithymia? Do you know that word?
Enlighten me.
Alexithymia. It's basically translates to like having the delay in processing one's emotions. Mm-hmm. So it's like when you're told information, you can process it informatively, so you understand what this information means, and then there's understanding how you feel about the information. And now, I know when we do the training, when I'm training NHS staff, we always talk about, it's about 6 seconds delay for informative processing. But when talking about emotional processing, like I know it can actually take several weeks, which is really difficult. I can understand for parents that I had one last year, and I just disappeared from the house for a couple of days because I was so angry about something that my aunt and uncle had said. And they had no idea what it was because it's something that happened in a conversation 3 weeks earlier. But then I realised I was really angry about it. But it took me that long to process how I felt.
And then take off 3 days. And take off 3 days. After 3 weeks, so, what happened?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, but we had a conversation. So my family and I, we have like 3 conversations about things now. The first one when they break the news. The second one probably later that day to see if I understand what it means informatively. And then we'll table one for a little bit, probably about a week or so later to see how I feel about it, or a couple of days. It's weird because it's not even going to be like a 3-week countdown. I'm not going to say, start the clock, I'll feel this in 3 weeks. It can be a couple of hours, it could be a couple of days. But I don't know how long it would take me to understand how I feel about something. And I can understand for some parents that could be a particular challenge for them. So I would say, again, when you've got information like that, maybe have a conversation at least twice. I would suggest 3 times. See if you understand what it means on an informative basis. So let's say, if they've got appointments in a building, the building has had to move, there's all this change coming in. So you have at least 2 conversations about that. One, that it's happening. Again, the more notice you can give, the better. Don't throw it, we're not going to this building as of tomorrow. If you know it's changing, probably give it about at least a couple of weeks' notice. And then maybe a bit later on that day, ask them, give them talk about it, see if they understand what that means. If it means, okay, we're not going to this building, we'll go to that one, and explain that. That's fine. And then maybe a couple of days down the line, just try and see if they want to talk about how they feel about it. It's a weird one because, again, as someone who's not great at talking about my emotions, again, especially if it takes me so long to process them, it can be frustrating. But having those conversations can be quite helpful.
The other thing that we parents do is being more protective about around the children, autistic children. But sometimes it can be counterproductive because we don't allow them to grow. So what is your take on this one?
So weirdly enough, I can give you something that my family did, but I'm also going to give you some advice from an old speaker friend of mine.
Okay.
And then he had a massive burnout when he tried to go to uni at Manchester. It was too much for him. He was too far away from home. He felt unsupported and he couldn't cope. But he's always said he was grateful that his parents allowed him the chance to fail than to stop him from giving it a go in the first place. Because then they were there to support him when he needed it. And then he changed to go to Birmingham University. And he got his degree in the end in political science. And because he knew going to Manchester, being that far away from his family for the whole time, was too much for him. So, but he didn't want to give up on that. He didn't want to, I tried uni once, it didn't work at all, never going to do it again. He said, okay, I know I can't go too far. What's a better option? I could do Birmingham. Birmingham's closer, I can do it from home. I don't have to live anywhere new. And I can still do what I want to do career-wise, which is what he did. But he's always said he was grateful that his parents allowed him the opportunity to fail, because I can imagine his parents, it's heartbreaking to hear. But again, if you are kind of, for a lot of autistic people, if you were around them 24/7, not giving them time to themselves, not letting them sometimes try things the first time, it can be really frustrating.
In this case.
Yeah. And I personally have always said it's better to know something if it be a potentially negative, and it be a potentially negative outcome, than always wonder what might have been. Because if you start wondering, what would happen if I did this? What would happen if I did that? You go down this rabbit hole of thinking and all this stress about the fact that it could be built up of, I'm really annoyed at myself because I didn't give this a go. It could be really anxious because I know it's something that's scary, but I'm going to be more anxious that I don't do it. Or I'm going to be too anxious for doing it. And no matter how you look at it, if you go into the world of what ifs, it will only ever cause more stress down the line.
Indeed.
So for a lot of people, again, people I've worked with, and myself included, they would tend to say, we will need you, of course, but we do want to be able to at least try and do things ourselves. And we'd rather, give it a go and it not work out and know you're there to support us than... Because unfortunately, as parents, guys aren't going to be here forever.
Indeed. And
they might tell you if again, my dad would use the phrase mollycoddled. And if you've mollycoddled your child the whole way through, as he would say, and then you're not there, they're then being forced to make those steps. Whereas at least if you can work with them to take those steps, it might be not as fast as you'd like. It might be a slow progress. But again, some slow progress whilst you're there to support is far better than none.
Indeed. And we have... time flies. One of the difficulties of autistic people, and statistics back me up on this, and you will tell us the numbers, the employment is an issue for them.
Abundantly so.
So talk to me first, starting with the statistics and why it's the case, if you have an answer for that.
So the most recent report that I've read was called the Buckland report about this, and it stated this. I think this was released in beginning of last year, and it said that less than 3 in 10 autistic people in any form of employment. But it said in comparison, 5 out of 10 disabled people are in employment, and 8 out of 10 non-disabled people are in employment. So yeah, for some reason, autistic people are significantly less.
3 out of 10.
Less than 3 out of 10.
Less than 3 out of 10.
Yeah.
Compared to disabled, which is 5 out of 10. Okay. Oh,
And
I'm learning today.
yeah, that's why I wanted to make sure I had the name of the report, because I'd seen it. I was like, yep, I need to memorize that.
Nice.
And there could be a whole range of reasons to why this might be. One could be reasonable adjustments. So we talk about, what could we put in place to make the environment as comfortable for someone as possible, like in a workspace. So there's an equation that we go over training by Dr. Luke Bearden, and it's autism plus environment equals outcome. And we have to remember that in this equation, we can't change the autism of the individual. So if we want a better outcome, we have to adapt the environment. And something like reasonable adjustments could be, like I say, me and my headphones.
I see.
When I did my first ever job, the fact I was allowed to wear them while I was working, worked really well. Like, I wasn't getting distracted by other customers. I could just...
You're not always listening music, but you're wanting to take it out of the noises of your surroundings. What it is that the headphone gives you? Or are you in tune or listening some calming music or whatever?
It can be both. So, because these are noise cancelling, the main thing is it can drown out background noise. So one of the ways I struggle is that if everyone is talking at once, I can't filter any of it out.
I see.
Even if I was to try and start talking to someone, if I go into a noisy room, I'm immediately hearing every conversation around me.
I see, yes. Okay.
So to have that is a nice way to drown it out. It's not so bad if I go into an environment once I'm talking to someone, if I go talk to them before I enter the environment, because I have my focal point before the environment's shifted. But if I don't have that, I will need those to be able to get through. And as I would say to the person, if you imagine it again on an employability basis, what's going to make you the most effective at your job? And so people know that for me, it's when available to wear my headphones. Of course, if you're interacting with customers in a shop, like retail, then obviously you can't wear them because it can be seen as very rude. But if you're just stocking the shelves and that, and so my former employer didn't mind that one because they said, look, he's quick on the job. He does it quickly. He does it exactly to the line. No pushing back. It's pitch perfect when he does it. So yeah, I don't mind him wearing the headphones because that helps him be to that level.
More focused.
So that's one reason, just reasonable adjustments.
Reasonable
adjustments. A lot of employers don't know about them. And unfortunately, even though, yes, there's a criteria where autistic people have to be interviewed for jobs, particularly like councils and that, just because they have to be interviewed doesn't mean they're going to get the job. And I'll always remember, to be fair, this is the council one, but as you know, I've been doing talks for so long now. I started when I was 15, so I actually started between my mocks GCSEs and my actual GCSEs. And because of that, before I had any kind of work, I've always had my autism on my CV. And of course, when I applied for a load of jobs, starting out once I was in college, I was being rejected, not even getting feedback at first. And I didn't think as to why. I just thought, well, maybe they've got other people on board. But I always remember when I applied for a job during my gap year, and this was a shop job in a couple of villages away from me, and I sat down for the interview, and the question I got asked was, so Dylan, how do you solve the problem that is autism? That's a job interview question.
Oh my God.
Now, I know a lot of people wouldn't know how to respond to that.
How did you respond?
Well,
you made me interested now.
I burst out laughing and I just said, right, here's how, don't see it as a problem. I made it clear there's going to be one time where this will be an issue. If I'm not down to work and you tell me you need me in 5 minutes, I'm going to tell you to do one. I'm not going to just come in because you want me in 5 minutes if I'm not down. But other than that, we'll get on great. And I got offered the job as well.
So, okay. Well, again, the honesty paid it off. So you tell them how not to treat you to come down in 5 minutes.
I said if someone dropped out the day before and they said you need me in the day before, I went, that's fine. But if it's the day before, because it's notice about that. But if you say 5 minutes, because it takes me 20 minutes to walk there, and of course if I'm not working, I'll probably might be trying to relax, and you just throw the whole day into schedule on the day. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to do particularly well. And I knew, I'll be better now than I was, but back then I knew that was something I would struggle with. So I said, if you need me in when someone's dropped out, let me know the day before.
Indeed. Okay.
That I don't mind, but you do it on the day, I'm just not going to do it.
So coming back to the employment, so you would like the employers to make a reasonable adjustment.
Yeah. And you can even find examples. So the NAS, it's something called a checklist, giving examples of reasonable adjustments, and you can find it on the Autism Space website. There's just a few examples of what can be put in. It can, again, some people like having almost like those kind of small walls you get in offices because it gives you the idea of your own space. So having things like that can be quite comfortable. Dimmer switches instead of having bright lights. So if you see like in hospitals, you can see how bright they get. If you're able to have like a dimmer switch in place, that can work particularly well. There's a lot of things, some of which will be like, well, this will affect everybody. And what if one of the questions you get asked is, what if one person needs light and one person
Doesn't need light, yes.
So that might be someone wearing dark glasses when they're indoors in the summer.
Indeed.
Because
Yes.
that brings the sight down for them, it doesn't impact everyone else around them.
Yes, when one of autistic person that I admire most is he convinced his employer to have that dark stuff because he didn't want to impose everybody else dim light because it is a shared office. And he wouldn't ask by himself only a place to be. So he come up with this dimming glasses, and whoever sees him, they think, oh, is this person on holiday or they are walking? but his employer understood that he's effective, and it's a reason why he wants not bright light on his eyes, but that kind of thing. So
and that's the thing, he's understood that might not work for everyone else around him, but he said to his employer, here's what I can do to help me with this. This will only be impacting me or make me better at my job. Can we implement it? And in that case, an employer would be mad to say no. It makes more sense to put that in place.
I would like to end in very contagious point. And I laugh because I know your reaction, what it be. Some of them, when they talk about autism, they talk about as a disability. Some of them, they talk about as a gifted plus thing with its shortcoming, mainly. So if you are just looking into all those sides, what it is, then how you categorize. Because I'm not asking you what is autism or not.
Yeah.
Understand my question is straight away. If you read on any NHS website, you know what you're gonna get, or a health website. But as a person living with autism, how you classify yourself?
So the way I classify myself would be very different from another autistic person.
Okay.
It's like we could talk about this for ages. Like, for example, how someone chooses to refer to themselves. If I've noticed over the years that people tend to be more positive about their diagnosis, or you might say come to terms with it, might prefer to identify as an autistic person, although maybe those who see it in a negative light, who haven't come to terms with it, might say a person with autism.
With autism.
Someone I once worked with years ago described it as like having a suitcase that's super glued to your hand. Mm-hmm. So they could never let go. It was always with them. They just didn't see it as part of themselves. And yes, you're right, you do see some people who view autism as a superpower. And again, from some parts, I can see it. Like if you combine it with like savant syndrome, so examples, you might see Rain Man, the movie, or Freddie Highmore's The Good Doctor, a recombination of those two.
Let's separate the Hollywood from the reality.
No, I know, but I'm trying to talk about.
But it's still Rain Man. He had his difficulties because he social aspect of it and not coping with the noises and all those things.
Yep. And the main thing to add is that most people just ask them how they are. Ask them how they view autism. Indeed. Some of them just want to be seen as themselves.
Thank you. I think our time is up, and you see it. Time.
I didn't see it.
Yes. And then we have only 1 minute to go. I give you the floor to conclude this wonderful, keeping eye on the timer.
The main thing is, again, when it comes to autism, the most important thing you can show as a parent is love and understanding.
Love and understanding.
Yep. And again, if your child wants to go out and try new things, let them. It's better for them. You know, they might always not see it in the moment, but if they do that and do fail and you're still there to support them, it's better that they have that now than then a few years down the line be thrust in a situation where they've got to do all that and you're not there to support them. And like I said, just to finish what I was saying earlier, is that with each autistic person, how they choose to refer to themselves, that's up to them. But again, some people see autism both in a negative and positive way, but I just see it as I'm autistic. Like I am happy to be autistic. I'm proud of my autism, but I can understand that some people aren't.
It is fascinating always talk to you about autism, and I learn always new things, and I hope that our listeners learned a lot, and thank you very much for being with us, and see you next